Hello and welcome to a special episode of Profiles in Risk. This is your host Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice, and today I have with me Bryan Falchuk. There's a lot to introduce Bryan by. Bryan is former C-level at I believe two different carriers, then former head of sales at an Insurtech.
Yep.
Then independent consultant for a while within our space, and four-time author now. So author of Do a Day.
Five times.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Do a Day, 3, Future of Insurance. What's number 5?
The 50-75-100 solution.
That's
Book with a
right.
bad title. Yeah.
Which I have not read, but I did send a copy of that one to a friend in need, and actually he found it very, very helpful. So 5-time author. And today, President and CEO of PLRB, and of course, your most important characteristic, my former creepy neighbor.
That's right.
So Bryan, thank you for joining me back on the show. How's it going?
It's going really well. It's good to see you again, and we got to actually see each other in person, which is not something people do much anymore. But we got to do it recently, which was very exciting.
Yes. So we finally hung out for the first time since COVID started, which is a long time, right? We're recording in May 2023. So we went from living next door, quite literally, to not seeing you for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And that was Insurtech Hartford, I think.
Yep. I
Perfect.
saw the top hat and the red sport coat, and I was like, Tony Cañas.
Perfect. Super easy. Yes, the branding works. So today, and I forgot, Bryan also might hold the record for the most guest appearances in Profiles in Risk, because it's gotta be 5 or 6. I have to go back and check it out.
It's at least this could be number 5.
So I would be surprised if anybody has more than that. Lamparelli has more than that, but it's only been 3 guests and then 150 as hosts.
Yeah. And Broker Brett's catching up if you want to count like that,
but Broker Brett has been on the big stage, I think, once or twice. So no, I really literally can't think of anybody else who has guest appeared at Profiles for more times than you have. So this time we're here to talk about your latest book.
Yeah. Which really good timing that it just literally right before we recorded, the physical copies just showed up because it's not even available yet, but I got mine.
So I do have to ask. So I remember, and I've only written one book. I'm a slacker.
It was a well-received book.
And I remember, I will never forget when the paper copy arrived. And I knew it was coming. I was recording video. It's one of the first videos on the Insurance Search YouTube channel. And I opened the box right in front of the camera and take it out. And the feeling is incredible. So I'm curious, on your 5th book.
Yeah.
Does anything like that keep happening?
No, it totally does. And
okay, awesome.
And if it doesn't, it means you shouldn't be doing them anymore, right? There's definitely something to be said for actually getting to see it and hold it and touch it. That is really, really cool. And now I'm just I have a lot of copies to send out, so I was also sort of dreading it. But it's awesome. It's really cool to get to, you put so much into it, so to see it, I should say, especially in insurance where nothing that we do is tangible, to actually have something related to insurance that you can hold in your hands, that is a very cool thing.
That is a very, very, very good point. Very, 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 very good point. Also, in the introduction, I failed to mention you're also the host of the Future of Insurance podcast.
Yes.
So the latest book, Future of Insurance,
Volume 3.
Volume 3. Okay.
The Collaborators. That's the title. So it's and I wrote it in a collaborative way. So I worked a lot with David Gritz, who's a co-founder of Insurtech New York. He contributed to it quite a bit. The first book was all legacy carriers, right? Stories of them kind of overcoming the odds and the barriers that we face. The second book was all these startup insurers who are, doing really cool things, challenging the industry, making us think about what's possible despite all the barriers that we face. And so I used up the 2 kinds of insurers, right? The new and the old. So the third book couldn't be one of those things. But what it could be is what I think actually is the path ahead is that coming together of the industry. It's not, Insurtech will win and non-Insurtech. Well, there kind of is no non-Insurtech anymore. And it's not about old versus new. I get that question a lot. Is well, who's going to win? It's actually about the coming together, the partnership, the collaboration. And that's not just like new and old insurers. There's all these solution providers and service providers who are kind of the lifeblood of change in the industry. And so that's the story I wanted to tell, is an insurer and an Insurtech solution provider coming together. Not so much what it was that they worked together on. Like, I talk about the tech or the solution, it's in there, but it's not about that. It's not like, if you want to do like CRM, you need this solution. And if you want, texting, use this one or whatever. That's not the point. The point is, how did it go working together? What went well, what didn't, and what can we learn from that, so that as an industry that's notoriously slow to change and to do things and to roll stuff out and can be difficult to work with, we got to get better at that if we want to keep pushing ahead. And customer expectations, market expectations, broker, agent expectations will not allow us to be slow, less and less as time goes on. So we have to get better at this stuff. And that was the point of the book, is let's take the lessons from folks who have done well. What did they do that made it go faster, better results? And what did they do that maybe didn't go so well? Because these are very honest, real stories. Like, not everything is roses. And there's lessons in those negative moments as well. So let's take the lessons from either side and see if we can build sort of like a super story of what collaboration could be. And that's the intention of the book.
And I think that I can provide some good context into kind of what the series is like, right? So there's at least two wonderful things about this series and the way that you write. Number one, you're a practitioner in our space.
Yeah.
In like every side of our space you've played. So this is not just a theoretical book. Number two, you're a former McKinsey consultant, so you're very good at digesting data, interviews, everything that's out there into a case study.
Yeah.
Number three, the way that you go about it, you're not just writing from the outside. You're literally going through the trouble of connecting with the people that lived it, and getting their story, and letting us see what really happened, not just the Monday morning quarterbacking from an outsider.
Yeah. And I think that last one is really critical, because, we can all go to the conferences or read the press releases and see like everything was perfect, and kind of piece the story together, but you're never going to know what happened. And to actually sit down with the people who lived it and to get them up front to be like, listen, we're going to have a real conversation, and I need to know the highs and the lows and why. That's where the lessons are. No one learns anything from the kind of sugar-coated version of what we see on stage. You learn something from the real story, because that's what you're living. And if you don't hear something that really resonates with you, it's going to be very hard for you to take away true lessons from it. I think about this conference I was at last year, and a friend of mine, we shared a cab back to the airport. He's a chief claims officer, and he was like really downtrodden. And I was buzzing. Like, I thought it was a great event. And I was like, what's wrong? He's like, we're toast. We're so far behind. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, all these other companies, all these competitors, like, look how amazing they're doing. They've got all this stuff in. It went really well, and we're struggling. I'm like, okay, let me like open up the curtain here. It ain't what you think. Like, they are struggling too. It's not where they say it is, and it was not a smooth and easy linear path to get to the points of success that they're talking about. So what you're experiencing, which I've seen, it's the same as what they're experiencing. So don't feel so bad. But like, with that kind of separation from reality, it's really hard for him to see anything that they're talking about as relevant to him, because it's like, well, they have it perfect and I'm struggling. So how possibly could what they did be relevant? That's not helpful for us.
And also another thing that I should have mentioned when I said the advantages, your books are not 356 page behemoths like When Words Collide, or 395 pages like The End of Insurance as We Know It. Both excellent books published by my company. They're much easier reads, right? Because you've done the hard work that the rest of us can't seem to do, to do the who was it that said I would have written you a shorter letter, but I think it was Mark Twain or Benjamin Franklin.
Time.
Yeah, I would have written a
Yeah.
shorter letter, but didn't have enough time. It's so much harder to bring it down to a more digestible format, and yours tend to be like 200 pages.
Yeah, I think the longest one is the second volume. The third one's the shortest. It's like 165 pages. The first two are around 200 pages, give or take. So yeah, the whole series is under 600 pages. You can buy all three and read them, in a weekend. Someone described one of them as a butt book. I'm like, what does that mean? It's like because it fits in that pocket in your pants. It's like, okay, that's a much nicer thing than where I thought you were going with it. Yes, it's. And so, like, I hear that from people, like, oh, I burned through it on the weekend, or like, I read it on a flight, or I read half of it on.
I read it on a
it's like,
flight.
cool, that's great. Because if you're stuck with it, or it's too long to get through, you're never going to take the lessons. And what I want is for people to be like, these are interesting stories, and I can digest them.
I read it on a flight is a really good compliment for a business book. When I was writing my millennials book, Insuring Tomorrow, I kept telling my editor, who is to this day unnamed, but you do know her, and it's not Carly. I kept telling her like it needs to be a real book. It can't be too short. And she kept telling me nobody wants to read a long book. Like it needs to be good and as short as possible. And the very first review that came in said, I read it on a flight to London, and here's all the stuff I loved about it.
Yeah. They're long enough that they're real books, but they're short enough that you can read them. And each of the cases, like, you don't have to read them cover to cover. I mean, I think you should, and I think it's interesting. And the cases are all like, there's lessons that flow together, but you can read a case, and you can, you can read a chapter standalone, and that's fine because they're their own stories, and they're each kind of like 8 to 12 pages. Because that's what I would want, like I just sort of wrote, like, if I was on the receiving end of this, what would I look for? And that's been, I think, a pretty winning kind of equation across the books.
Okay, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of it, but the official release date. So we're recording May 18th.
Yes.
Official release date is
June 8th.
June 8th.
But I can't control the release of certain types of the book. So I just got word yesterday from Audible that the Audible version is fully available, and I can't do anything about it. So it's not out yet, but have a listen.
Oh, good point on the Audible piece. Okay, so for the listeners, writing a book is hard. Publishing a book is hard. Publishing an audiobook is harder by a lot. So much so that there is no Audible version of my book. Taryn has actually went through the trouble of recording an Audible version, and we have never been able to get it approved by Audible. Literally, I gave up on it. I should just give it away at this point.
We should talk. I might be able to help.
So there are people who just like pay somebody to record it professionally. You do your own, right?
I do my own, for two reasons. And the first one I think will resonate with a lot of people is I'm cheap, so there's that. But actually, the real reason is, and like you and I were talking before we recorded, my first book, which is pre-insurance books, I recorded in my closet in that apartment that was right by yours, which is super awkward. You thought I was a creepy neighbor. Little did you know what I was doing recording in my closet. But what I learned in that process, and I did that after I had released the book, I found all kinds of things that just didn't flow right. When you read out loud, not even just in your head, but literally speaking it out loud, you're like, wait, that doesn't even make sense. So for me, actually, the audiobook, as cumbersome and laborious as the process is, it's like a critical part of my editing process to make sure what you get makes sense, is understandable, is digestible, etc. And it's really hard. Luckily, I'm better at it than I used to be. And I've got, like my setup all down and all that. But man, it is a lot of work. And the editing is... it's a ton of work. But it's worth it. So
June 8th, and with books, there's usually no advantage for the reader in pre-ordering, right?
So there's an advantage in the sense that if you pre-order, it helps when the book goes live. It spikes the numbers, and Amazon loves that, and then they promote it to more people. So there's certainly an advantage for the author, but I'll be super blunt about this. I don't write books to make money off writing books. You know this, the economics of selling books is not great.
Yep.
I write books for the impact that they have. And when I think about what that is, and I think this will appeal to the people listening to this, because I think there are people who care about this industry. If there's something that's out there that helps the industry move forward and helps inspire people to care about the industry, you should want to be on that train.
Absolutely.
And so if you if you want the Kindle version, go pre-order it, please, because that will help the number spike, which will mean Amazon will show it to more people, which means it will spread more, and that means it gets to have more of an impact to help the industry. And if you care about that future of where this industry is going, you need as many people bought into that and invested in it and excited in it as possible. I mean, that's why we do all this stuff, the podcast,
Absolutely.
all of it.
Absolutely. For any aspiring authors listening to this, Insurance Nerds can help you publish it. You'll make some money, not enough to live on.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make a big difference in the industry. It does have it opens a lot of doors to be a published author.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is you can really help us push the industry forward in a much more solid way. And there is nothing like holding your book on paper, right? And I am so June 8th is my go day for Argentina. So literally that's the day that I'm flying to Argentina. I'll make sure that this episode goes live that day. Okay. And I had to put most of my life in storage. I kept one copy of my book out because I so often I'm chatting with people and I pull it up in front of me on the Zoom call and I say, as I'm introducing myself, I go like, I wrote the book on how to engage millennials in the insurance industry. So I need at least one copy of it, and holding the cover would be the same. Okay, so who are the companies that so you told me like what are they, but can you share the names of the companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually a key piece, because I had some insurance companies who were willing to be in it were like, but you can't use our name. It's like, no, then you're not in it, because if you're not willing to share who you are, you're out.
Yes, I love the fact that you're willing to walk away.
Yeah, and there's some pretty big companies. I was very excited for them to be like, we'd love to be in it. And then I get to the but. All respect to them. I totally get it. This just isn't the right thing for you. So that's fine. But the companies that are in it, it's a mix, like very different spread of companies. So it's an insurer plus an Insurtech. So I'll name both together. So you got Nationwide, which I think people have heard of. Some people here may have worked for, and a company called Kinetic that is an IoT safety device that was becoming a workers' comp MGA. So they partnered on an investment, and Nationwide's actually their capacity for their MGA. So actually really interesting story that crosses a number of different fronts to bring that out. So that's the first one. The second one is a company called Mountain West Farm Bureau. You may not know Mountain West. You probably know Farm Bureau carriers. So they're one of the Farm Bureau mutual carriers. And a company called Guidewire that I would assume most people here know. And this was for a Guidewire Cloud core system implementation. And they did it in 12 months, which I opened the story with a joke that I will admit Guidewire was not happy about me putting in. But, that's the rules. You got to let me say what I need to say. And the joke's like, we're in year 8 of your 3-year core system project. And they were very unhappy about that. Which
it happens all the time.
So it says 5 years in there. I'm just trying to be like kind. But the reality is no one's ever on time. No one's ever on scope. No one's ever on budget. And it's a tough thing because it's a huge thing. And there's a lot of reasons why. This story is the opposite of that. And I think given how much money and time and effort we put into core systems and how critical they are to the day-to-day of everyone who works in this industry and is on the receiving end of it, I had to do a story that's the opposite of what we all think and feel about core. So I loved that one. And it's a great story anyway, but so many lessons in that one.
I've heard rumors that Grinnell Mutual actually pulled off a Guidewire transformation on time and on budget. But yeah, like it might be like 2 or 3 carriers out of 800 that have successfully done it on time and on budget.
Yeah, and well, the cool thing is like I know another one who I went to first, and because I knew their CEO, and he's like, "Yeah, we can't do it. We've got some stuff going on, can't be in the book, so that's fine." But I've seen it with Guidewire Cloud on like 4 or 5 occasions, and according to Guidewire, there are more. I don't know the stories, but it is possible. The question is how, and that's again that's why we need to get into this stuff. And there's a lot of points where you will be found disagreeing, like, "Oh, but we can't do it because." I'm like, hold on a second. What if you just allowed for the way they did it to be reality? Because it did happen. what would you achieve then? And that's like one takeaway from the whole thing is like, what if you just suspended disbelief and stopped arguing against it and just did it that way? Instead of saying, well, we can't because we don't work that way. Well, that's not working out so well for you. So like, what if you tried something else?
And I've got to say, if you're a carrier and you're thinking we can't do it, go to book one.
Yeah.
Go to book one, and especially the one that was really blew me away. Book one is the state compensation
I'm
fund.
so glad you said that.
Because it's a freaking state organization.
It's like you have politics. Well, they report to the governor. Your people don't want to change. Their people are unionized and
in California, of all places.
California, like, yeah, every excuse any carrier gives me, I'm like, let me introduce you to the state comp fund of California because they have all that and then some. And look what they did. COVID hit, they were wheeling their computers out on their desk chairs because they had desktops with like big monitors and everyone to come in, get their chair, put their stuff on it and wheel it out to the parking lot. That's how they went virtual, you know, like, but they did it, right? Oh, we can't because really? Look at these people. They're wheeling their chairs around. They did it.
That is fantastic.
So
okay.
they're awesome. All right, so Mountain West Farm Bureau and Guidewire. The third is Ohio Mutual, who makes a return appearance from my first book.
Excellent.
And a company called Pinpoint Predictive. Very cool story around Ohio Mutual wanting to do something in AI, not so sure that fits with their values. And so they wanted to be careful and thoughtful about it. Pinpoint was still really new when the story was started up. They're more, they're older now. They've done a lot more and their stuff's pretty amazing, but it was new on both sides. And it kind of languished for a while. Like, this is where you got to be honest, right? Like, this story is not all peaches, but it went really well once they figured out how to move forward. So that was very cool. The fourth one is a company called American European Insurance Group, or AEIG. And it was like AIG? No, AEIG.
Yeah.
Really small, privately owned company, carrier out of New York, and a company called ProtoSure. And ProtoSure is, before no code, low code was a thing. That's what it was. And it was a way for AEIG, who had, you know, mainframe like AS400 systems that were incredibly restrictive and causing a lot of problems for their brokers, their work with their brokers and agents. They knew they needed a new core system, but that was going to be years off. And they couldn't just wait 4 or 5, whatever year. I mean, they hadn't even started the project of evaluating them. So like, it was going to be a ways off. And they didn't feel they would survive in the market waiting for that. So ProtoSure allowed them to do something. And the cool thing there is it was throwaway. And they're not working together, like they're sunsetting what they're doing because their new core system is ready. And so that's an interesting story because like, who admits that? Oh, we wasted money, or yeah, we're not working together anymore. We're not going to be. Well, like, that was known going in, and that's okay. And sometimes we're really hesitant to do throwaway work or something that's an interim solution, but we pay such a price in the market by not being able to meet the needs when that bar is just shooting up. So I like that story for those reasons. It's like, all your excuses of why you wouldn't do this, it's really low cost, it's really simple to do, super high ROI. Even if it fails miserably, you're still going to make out ahead. Why wouldn't you do this?
That is fantastic. Yes, I love the fact that it was an interim solution, and when you said AS400, like I had to laugh, and my first reaction was, I should probably explain what an AS400 is because some of the younger listeners might have no idea. My second reaction was, well, anybody who is at a traditional carrier in a leadership role does know what they are because we still have, right? But anyway, an AS400 is basically an IBM mainframe from like the 70s.
Yeah.
And many of them are still working.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
No, and they're great, but yeah, it's like the green screen stuff, and yeah, and you know what? Actually, they can be like web enabled. You can do online payments, but like, there is a lot of capability there, but not in and of itself. You have to figure out what can we layer onto it or connect it to be competitive, and you're not without options. You just need some flexibility. The other piece of that story that was cool is ProtoSure was like brand new, had no customers, no references or anything, and having sold into carriers, I came up against one. I tell the story in the book, where we got through the demo, they loved it, and they were like, well, how long have you been in business? And we're like, this is year 2, or maybe it's year 3 at that point, I forget. And the guy was like, oh, we need to stop here. It's like, why? Well, our CEO has a rule: no companies under 12 years. We can't work with anyone under 12 years of experience. And I was like, what happens between year 11 and 12 that like the switch is flipped? And here's the interesting point. You and I were talking before recording about an event, and one of the sponsors was our old competitor who's not in business anymore. At that point, they weren't at 12 years, but today they are. And my old company is now at year 7, I think, or 6 or 7. So we still wouldn't have met the bar. They would have. And they got acquired and shut down. So like if your little 12-year, like if age somehow
That is a bad rule.
It's
Yeah.
a terrible rule.
Yeah,
like,
terrible rule.
You can have all kinds of rules, but they have to be grounded in rationality, not just like, well, the CEO decided on a random number. It's like, okay, I'd love to see the math of how many companies die in years like 12 to 15 versus like 7 to 10. It's that can't be your basis for it. So lots of little lessons of like, are we being rational with our decision making? And that ends up being a lesson for the book as a whole. And the last one, I know you'll know these folks, Ben Akiva and Homesteader's Life, who was their first customer. And there's so many lessons in this one. This was another joint like investment and customer decision, and the kind of the potential fuzziness or grayness between those lines became a real focal point for it. Because you could think you're our first customer, you're our only investor, we don't exist without your money. Are you going to strong arm us? Like we're trying to build something for the industry. Your folks are used to working a certain way from their legacy systems. They're asking us to design this new free thinking solution to suit their legacy processes. We don't want to do that. You're going to get something worse. It's going to be less efficient. And for the staff, they're feeling like, well, we own these people, or we gave them all their money. They need to do what we say. And the flip side could go the other way, where, the business could be saying, hey, we need Ben Akiva to build the system like this, and like kind of whining to the CEO or crying to him about it. And he could say, no, we made this investment. We need them to, build it like that, even though it's not what we need. So you're going to have to deal with it. And we're going to have to be less efficient as a business or be miserable. So it's like either side could strong arm the other one. And it's very interesting, the rules they put in place structurally and the way that they engaged to make sure that didn't happen. That's a huge lesson. I think especially as more and more carriers look at making venture investments, or taking equity positions, they're going to run into that more. And the other thing is, I mentioned ProtoSure was like brand new, didn't have a customer. Technically, Ben Akiva didn't even exist. Like they may have been incorporated, but the founders were all like doing this at night. They had full-time jobs. So like part of the whole, like, yes, we're going to sign an agreement was the CEO of Homesteaders, Steve Schaefer, saying to Brent Williams, the CEO of Ben Akiva, part of the deal is you have to quit your job already. Like you have to be fully into this if you want us on board. And, he's like half kidding, but he wasn't. So it's not even like, we were like 3 years old when we hit that 12-year-old thing. It's like Ben Akiva doesn't even exist yet. So like, how do you measure that age?
That is fantastic. I don't know what comes next. What book 4 is, if there is a book 4. I don't know.
There is, and it's almost done.
Oh, what is book 4?
And I'm not writing it, which is why it's almost done.
Okay.
So book 4 is being written by my friend Teresa Blissing, and she's one of the 2 hosts of the Asia Insurtech podcast. It's about the Asian market.
Okay.
I'm not the one to write that book. I know a lot about the U.S. market. I know some things about Asia and some of the other markets, but I would be doing that book a disservice by writing it. So Teresa is taking the reins, following the same sort of, recipe. That will be out probably later this year. She's still getting some case studies together, but fascinating. I love us, like, let's take in different perspectives, different things going on. And it's specifically looking at sort of new ways of thinking about distribution, because they're such different markets and they're, mobile first and all that. And I think like Africa is another one that's fascinating to me about what's possible that I think we should be studying. So there will be more books.
So I've got an idea for book 5 or 8, or when after you're done with the ones that are already planned.
It could be 73 at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I would love one about the kids, and basically focusing on Insurtech founders that were under 30 when they launched, who have managed to be successful. and how they managed to do it, how they managed to get over the age thing. I'm running, and the reason I'm bringing this up, I'm 40 now, so like I've gone from being like the kid who talks about millennials to being like the middle-aged guy that talks about millennials and about Gen Z. I keep running into like super impressive like 23-year-olds that
Yeah.
are coming out of Global Insurance Accelerator or on ramp or whatever, and they're like bright as heck. Not every
Yeah.
one of them, but the ones that,
But
that
the ones whose stories we want to tell, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I'm sure they're all going to like I have literally found myself like recording a podcast episode and then at the end being like, so according to my math, based on your college start year on LinkedIn, you're about 23.
Yeah.
I'm 40, and in our industry, up until a couple of years ago, most of the leadership saw me as a child. They see me like a
Yeah.
teenager now.
Yeah.
You should grow your beard. like I have found myself like you should dress a lot older than you are.
You're not kidding. Yeah, I don't know if you've come across Wesley Pergament from Sola.
Yeah, that is one of the people I was thinking about. Absolutely.
So I was like, I still count my lucky stars for this. I was his mentor at the GIA.
Fantastic.
And it was the first year of COVID, and so I'm connected to him from his parents' house, and I'm like, oh, he's probably like recent college grad, like doing a startup, saving some money. No, he wasn't a recent college grad. He dropped out or took time off of his first year, second year, forget, of college. I had no idea. I just thought he looked a bit young, but I figured he's like 21, 22. No, he's 19.
Yeah.
And now he's older, but yeah. And so he would grow a little beard just to like try to counter that.
Yeah, no. He saw me at GIS, the conference,
Right.
right? And I didn't get to meet him. And then we were on the same flight to Vegas for ITC, I don't know, 2021. And we land, and as I'm starting to walk away, the guy catches my attention, introduces himself. We record a quick interview that is part of my ITC video diaries for that year, and shared an Uber, and we kind of like hung out. I introduced him to a bunch of people, super impressed. And yeah, the kid wasn't even 21,
Yeah,
right?
and he's starting MGA. They have capacity, and their first product's going live any day now.
I couldn't get him into the Shaquille O'Neal event with Bold Penguin, even though I'm friends with the organizers, because he wasn't 21.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway, like any advice with real stories for that generation on how to successfully sell and service a relationship in our very traditional industry, I think that would sell like hotcakes.
Well, and I think I know the guy who should write it, Tony. You're well positioned for that. And I'm happy to help you with it. Yeah, and I think we talk incessantly about the talent problem in the industry, and everyone's retiring, and how do we get these kids, like with quotes, into the industry, and how do we keep them? They don't want to be here, and they're not. You know what? It's on us, and we need to support them and recognize talent when it's there, and not say, yeah, but they're only X years old. I look at it and I'm like, wow, what a failure I am. That, when we were at Insurtech Hartford Symposium, and the general manager of Mohegan Sun gave like some opening remarks, and I'm sitting there, first of all, being like, he's in great shape and has incredible hair. Like, I'm feeling super old right now. But he was also, I don't know, like 34? So who knows how old he is, but somewhere in his 30s, I would guess. And he's running a multi-billion-dollar, hugely successful business. And I just felt like, wow, where am I at in my life? We need to actually have respect for the folks doing that and not write them off because I think that's a point of insecurity on people's parts. Like, wow, I wasn't doing that then. I better make it. I had to go through tough stuff, so I got to make it harder on him. Why? If it's a great idea and this person clearly knows what they're doing and just needs support, why wouldn't you support that?
And I'm not saying every 20-year-old founder is fantastic. I've run into some that were not.
For sure.
But some of them are darn impressive.
Yeah. And some just need support and guidance. And so you still you need to do your due diligence on them. But age, it's just like someone is not eligible or ineligible for promotion or deserving or not deserving of it because of their tenure at the company or their age.
Oh my God.
When I hear people like, well, it's been this many years since their last one, they deserve it. I'm like, well, hang on a second. That might be why they're unhappy and they're talking about leaving. but that doesn't mean that their work is great. We should only be talking about the quality of their work and their potential. And if those things are aligned, I don't care if they've been here 5 minutes or 50 years, it's irrelevant. Like, that's what it needs to be about.
No, nothing will cost you more talent, or few things will cost you more talent than ignoring, not promoting, not paying, etc., penalizing
Yeah.
your very high performing young superstars.
Yeah.
And speaking of books, there's still an NDA in place, so I can't say too much about it. I'm not the author, but I am very close to the author. And so a great story around this coming in about a year when her NDA expires.
Okay.
And for anybody that's curious, just make sure you follow me on LinkedIn, because I'll be posting all about this, even though I'm not the publisher or the author. But yeah, yes, don't like it's a stupid way to lose talent.
Okay.
I'll
set my calendar for next year.
Absolutely. Any closing words about the book or your future plans?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really just boils down to, I think, the fundamentals of the industry and remembering why we're doing this. And when you get back to that purpose, it's really easy to get re-excited. And that's what we need. So yes, read the books, find inspiration from them, but I would sort of invite people, before you open that page or, hit play on Audible or swipe on the Kindle or whatever, which is not a subtle hint that it's available in multiple formats. That was the subtle hint. But before you do any of those things, just like recenter yourself on why this work is so great. Because we do get lost in that. There's a lot of frustrations or insureds. I come from a claims background, so it's like, well, they're yelling at us. We're just trying to help them, but they think that we're the enemy and we're trying to screw them out of money. It's like, remind yourself why we do this work and why it's important work. And it is about, yes, putting lives back together. And that's an incredible and important story. And if you've seen Catastrophe, you understand the gravity of that responsibility. But the other piece of it is, before catastrophe strikes, and even if it doesn't, risk stops the world from functioning. Like, business does not happen. People don't buy homes, cars, start families. Goods aren't transported or made in the first place. Like, literally nothing happens in the world. Like, water projects in Africa to bring water to people who, are facing drought and famine. Like, none of that happens without something taking the risk off the table so it can move ahead. And when you think about that, we put lives back together, but those lives don't even function in the first place if we're not there to keep things flowing. That's profound. I love just kind of recentering on that, and then I get amped up, and then I'm like, so how do I do this better? Because this is important stuff, and we need to keep pushing. And then dig into the books, and you will find lessons, and you'll find inspiration and excitement. And then it's like, run with it. So that's what I would ask of everyone, is just remind yourself why you do this work, and then take in as much inspiration as you can.
I want to do the mic drop, but it's a weirdly shaped.
Break your mic, yeah.
No, this thing's like steel, but it's a weirdly shaped. I might break my foot. Bryan, thank you so much today. Fantastic. I look forward to catching up on the on your books. Thank you so much. And for the readers, for the listeners, on the show notes, I will include the link to Amazon to buy it. I will include a link to your website or your podcast,
awesome.
to your LinkedIn. Oh, is there an autographed version from your website?
Yes. So if people go to future-of-insurance.com, there's a link to buying the books. And one of the options for each version is a signed copy. I can only do that in the U.S. just because, like, shipping anywhere else in the U.S. is crazy expensive. Mm-hmm. But if you want the book outside the U.S., you can get it from whatever local Amazon. But yes, if you're in the U.S., signed, totally an option. Happy to do that. That's why I keep copies on hand.
One thing I noticed on the website, future-of-insurance.com, you actually go out of your way to have purchase links for the different Amazons and the different Audibles for the different countries. As a kid that grew up in Costa Rica and always had to struggle with ordering anything because everything assumes you're in the U.S. and that makes it hard if you're not, or impossible.
Yeah.
Thank you. So much better.
I'm glad that
I'm sure it took a bunch of work.
That. It took some work. It's worth it. But then I'm always surprised when people are like, you need to include international links. I'm like, here you go, because it's right there on the page. But that's totally fine. And that's all right. Like my job is just to make it easier for you to find it, and that's awesome. But yeah, I actually wish it was easier to buy from Amazon internationally, where it's like I could send them one link and it would automatically localize, but they've split them into different businesses, so it is a completely different link. I think that creates consumer complications that aren't necessary, but I don't run Amazon, so what do I know?
It probably saves them a ridiculous amount of money on taxes.
Or it's legal entities or whatever. But like,
Exactly.
hey, if it makes you feel better, insurance isn't the only industry that's not perfect. And when people talk about how great Amazon is, it's not perfect, right? Everyone's got room to do better. Let's we can
Absolutely.
say that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Tony.